Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It is Chris, aka Starrapter, back from a hiatus. I'm with somebody that you're not used to seeing a whole lot, and this is Matthew from Eye On Canon. We're talking all about the High Republic Phase 2 Quest of the Jedi on today's show. I had to go look for an expert because I wasn't about to talk about this for 2 hours because you guys would probably get bored and maybe fall asleep with my voice over time. But yes, I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to have you. If anybody has been paying attention, me and Matthew have been doing the tractor beam over on the Star Wars Underworld Network over the last almost probably 2 months at this point. It's been flying by. We've been having a blast. Yeah, every Thursday at 12:15 p.m. Eastern time, we've been chatting the latest with the comics. It's been kind of a nice companion piece to my usual reviews, and we have a longer form discussion. So yeah, I'm gonna just throw it over to you. We had a lot of fun adventures in New York. I see you arrived back in Toronto safely, probably begrudgingly, because it looks like you're having a great time over there.
Yeah, a little bit. It was people were asking, are you so you're back? I'd say unfortunately, a little bit. Also to say, oh my goodness, High Republic expert. You've made it when you're considered an expert in your favorite thing in Star Wars. So here I am talking about High Republic, wearing a Mortis shirt. This isn't my usual setup. This is not the Underworld North Studio in Toronto. This is the suburbs, just a makeshift little setup here. But talk about historic houses. It kind of could be like Dalma. That could be Dalma. Why not? Let's just pretend. There we go. Yeah, and then the tractor beam. It's been fun. Being fun to chat comics. Just have the time and space to dive into what it's like for droids to use the Force and delve on personhood and agency in droids and in cyborgs and everything. Good timing because of Dark Droids hitting the shelves. The great crossover to have the time to chat and think about those things with you every Thursdays lunchtime or breakfasting, as the case may be.
Yeah, it's been a blast. I've really enjoyed it because you asked me a while ago and I was like, oh, let's figure out a day. It's like, oh, these nights aren't working. Why don't we just do a podcast at like 12 p.m. in the afternoon? Let's switch it up. It doesn't have to always be at night prime time. And there's people out there that have flexible schedules. They could tune in live or even after the fact. I know you upload those to a podcast streaming network, right?
So that one I've been behind on, but for the audio, but the video is always on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, and so yeah, it's always there. It's always on Underworld Twitch and Eye On Canon Twitch, Eye On Canon Podcast being my main podcast with Joel Davis over also on the Underworld Network Underworld channel. That's Mondays 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and those are all there. But yeah, I need to thanks for the reminder. I need to get on that uploading to Spotify. Maybe Tractor Beam have a dedicated Tractor Beam feed. Because we've built up. We've gone maybe 15 or so, I think 16 episodes so far in the last few months. So
oh yeah, lots. And I even enjoyed listening to your single adventures back in the day. I'd be at the job listening. I'd be like, yeah, this is the stuff I'm thinking about. There's somebody else out there covering this stuff. So it's been nice to reunite or unite forces to tackle these really fun stories we've been reading so far. As always, we start this thing off, and it's been literally months, and I mean months, since we did this as a podcast, which is our week in Star Wars. We were covering the latest, and with Star Wars, we haven't had a lot of time to talk about what we've been doing lately. So we're gonna throw it over to you first. Do you have anything cool to show? Anything cool to just share? Stories? Anything this week or in the last several weeks that you want to talk about Star Wars? I'm sure there's a lot.
Funny, yeah. I could talk about New York Comic Con. You and I have talked about New York Comic Con plenty, even on this channel and of course on the Underworld channel. Mm-hmm. I forgot. So Monday, we usually do this too, Joel and I. On Monday, I forgot to mention Bad Batch 2 with Paul Sun-Hyung Lee. So here's the thing: with living in Toronto is, Paul. He's very. He's really, really friendly and open. If you have a question, on Instagram DMs, he's likely to get back to you eventually. Things like that. Every year, just after his birthday, last year was the first one. This past year was the second one. He does a ticketed public birthday / Halloween kind of thing, and it was this past Saturday, and it was the Bad Bash 2, Bad Bash. Yeah, it was great, and it was $60, every cent of it going to Canadian Blood Services, great cause that he believes in, that we all believe in, and Off Roll Bar here in Toronto, down on Queen Street. Just go, and they donated the drinks, and they donated the drinks. You pay for the drinks, and they donate to Canadian Blood Services as well. Great raffle, and at some point throughout the night, Paul comes around and works the room and just chats with everyone. And so it was Dom, Kareem, and me, and a bunch of other folks chatting about, saying, "Hey, thanks for everything you did in this streaming service that I know you're on strike for, but thanks, you can talk in person about. Thanks for doing that, doing such a great job, being such a surprise appearance in that show." And yeah, and Dom chatting with the Blue Jays with him, which was great. But yeah, so that's always really cool. And so yeah, I never got any photos myself, but here's the I think the really cool thing is, and I'm gonna kind of cross the picket line slightly here, is because it's just too cool. So our friend Kareem is a cosplayer, and he was maybe one of the first cosplays of Ezra in the show, in the streaming service show, and in the grown up Ezra with the beard and everything. And so he's there. He shows Paul the cosplay.
Oh.
Dom takes a photo on Paul's phone, and Paul's like, "I'm gonna send this to Dave Filoni." And he texts Dave Filoni because they're on he got the phone.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, so that's really sweet. Just yeah, he does such a great job, and you don't get starstruck with him because he's so kind and approachable. And when he was at the beginning talking about Canadian Blood Services and how his own father needed, I think, a blood transplant recently, and so getting clearly very emotional about that. And yeah, he is what you see is what you get with that guy, is the sense I have, and so it's just a really cool, again, a reminder about this city, especially about how the Star Wars fandom in this city is still tremendous. So in that, also to say that I have recovered from coming back from New York. It was spectacular, but yeah, it's good to be settled and get to kick off that return with a party right here in my backyard. So yeah, that's the week in Star Wars. I mean, if you want to talk about comics, I go on the Underworld Network. We talked about that yesterday, and yeah, I don't know. And there's another. I mean, the Marvel streaming service, that was great too, and that's got some Star Wars-esque things going on there. But yeah, I guess that's about it for me. Cool, fun party, real world connection, human connections there.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome about just rubbing elbows with somebody just out there. With the fans, not having bodyguards, not having a security force between you and them, just having like that. You could probably take just us. So yeah, that's really cool. I mean, you sent me that message at like 2 a.m. or something. You're like, oh yeah, I was just with this actor from Star Wars. What the hell? Yeah, because I know
another Saturday night, another 2 a.m.
Did you? Now the real question is, did you actually have spotchka while you're over there?
No, although there is a. So I think last year there was something like a blue drink called spotchka, because is that the. So there's the restaurant, kind of nerdy bar and grill restaurant pub place called Stormcrow Manor. If you're ever in Toronto, come to Stormcrow Manor. They have something called Romulan Ale. That's Star Trek, but that for that night they renamed to spotchka, and so there's that. No, there was a Yoda margarita, and some other thing. I think I get like a horror themed, if it bleeds we can kill it kind of thing, and just like it's also the Halloween vibe. Oh yeah, and I think the non-alcoholic version was, oh my goodness, what's the thing that Luke is milking in the
thalocyrine.
Yeah, so it was like thalocyrine milk, sort of, but it was a cocktail. So yeah, they do fun nerdy things there, and yeah, it's cool to be nerdy. It's cool to be geeky now. Geeky is fun. Nobody
Mhm.
cares. It's fine.
Oh yeah, that's good to see you. You're safe back there, having a good time. I'll show you guys because we have an entire video breaking down everything we've seen out there standing in front of the Javits Center. Me and you are there's the place closed down for the weekend where we're recapping everything that happened. So I don't want to, repeat anything we already did over there. And we have a lot to talk about tonight, as I said off the top. But I will show two things that I was very happy that I actually got my hands on at the convention. And you guys have seen stuff on my Instagram, maybe, of the crazy amount of Star Wars ornaments I've collected from, I think, the age of 7 onward. And they actually had unique, specific, exclusive Hallmark ornaments that you could only get there. And they had some of my favorite characters of Star Wars, so I had to get these, each one. You got Blacker Santin in this nice box. This is an exclusive box. They're usually in like the red and white boxes too. So even the packaging, and look at that, one of 3,000. Incredible. And it looks so good. Like, I don't want to take him out, but I'm going to because I'm not that kind of creator. Like, I will take things out of the box. Unless there's like a couple, like, I don't know. I have like a Kylo Ren and a
there's no
Han
window,
Solo.
right? So yeah, that's the thing with Black Series when there was no window. If there's a window, maybe leave it in. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And then 5,000 for Revan. Now, this is huge. Actually, both of these are huge. This is the first time we're getting a video game Star Wars ornament. The first time we're getting a comic book created character in an ornament. So they are breaking new ground. If only Hasbro would start to follow along and do High Republic characters, then I'd be happy.
you think? Yeah, we can claim Santi. We can claim Santi. Heather Antos can claim Santi for sure.
So yeah, I'm very happy. I'm running out of room very quickly because I also said, I think I showed it off on a previous stream that I have. Also the Jabba the Hutt, which is like the actual puppet. It's really neat. How they make these ornaments, they are just ridiculous. They're very pricey nowadays, but they are very worth it because they do really cool things. Like, I also have the Empire Strikes Back Carbonite scene with Han Solo, and I haven't actually put batteries in it yet or anything, but it's supposed to have the whole scene with the lights, and he's going to go up into the tunnel and come out as carbon. Like, it blows my mind that these things are actually ornaments, and I just don't have any room on these trees. I'm going to have another artificial tree for more Star Wars ornaments, and I'm only 33. What happens when I'm like 66? I'm gonna need 5 trees by then.
Well, when you're 38, there you go. There you go.
So
I mean, how big of trees are you talking about? Are we talking about like the little whatever?
yeah,
Or are we talking
it's
about
like a
full...
6-foot tree, like a 6-foot 5-foot
All
or
right.
6-foot artificial tree. And I have that thing dedicated to Star Wars. There's nothing else on there that's not Star Wars. I get usually on average between 4 to 6 ornaments a year now, because some of them I buy with my own money. It used to be my part of my Christmas gift every year. My mom would gift me 1 or 2 of them, and now they're so cool. Like, they have an entire 2-page spread of ornaments every year with Star Wars. So it's like, well, I gotta have them all. So I end up just spending my own money on some of them too. So it's just like this year there's a Rancor with Boba Fett. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm probably gonna get that one too if I find it.
It's pretty cool. That was a cool scene in that show. You got post videos. I'm curious to see what those look like. The Carbonite one. And even the Jabba puppet. Like, I'm intrigued.
It's so cool because it's got the sound effects. Its mouth moves and it's like rubberized, so it's like literally like Jabba the puppet. It's neat. All right, we're going to roll right into it with something that we've already talked about, so we're not going to spend much time on it, and that is what came out this week. We have Dr. Aphra issue number 37 and D-Squad issue number 2, both tying into the Dark Droid Scourge event, so we have plenty of content between the channel here, watching my video that I put out on Thursday, and then going over to the Star Wars Underworld Network. I have a link already to their channel in the description now. If you're watching live, go ahead after this video and give us a view over there and send us a comment, because we really want to start building up a strong community over there, because the Star Wars comics is very niche. We realize that, but there's really good stuff happening, and we would love to have your feedback, everybody out there. So there's a little cross-pollination going on, but we're all together in this, and we all just want to have that positive Star Wars community going between here, there, and everywhere.
If only if you're just curious as to what my actual podcast setup usually looks like.
There we go.
The Underworld North. But also, yeah, we go into it. I have a very intellectual background, with some master's degrees, and so kind of bringing that to the play in Star Wars comics about droids and this Scourge thing, and yeah, who knew? But yeah, it's been fun. So yeah,
It's very timely. I will say it's very timely that we're getting this story this time of year. It's great. Because sometimes Star Wars kind of misses the boat. Like there's been other stories. Like I'm so happy we got Tales from the Death Star this year. Like actually in time for Halloween. It was perfect to read on the train home from Comic-Con.
Yeah.
And
I read it on the plane home. Yeah.
Say all different kind of transportation. We're reading Star Wars however we can cram it in, right? So that's the hardcore fans making Lucasfilm proud there. And we're really happy about High Republic. We're always championing it, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on our own videos. Me and you have been holding up that light for a while, and as I said, I think on yesterday's, like this, the High Republic is what's going to be carrying the flame for Star Wars for a considerable amount of time, with these strikes having hampered a lot of things. So it's great to see Star Wars Publishing taking that limelight. And even if you were to go on StarWars.com right now, they have that little like logo and a address thing. It was Ahsoka for the longest time, and now it is actually the High Republic Jedi logo. So it's like, yes, they acknowledge, they put it front and facing. The High Republic is back for Phase 3, the final phase. But tonight we're taking a step back. I have not really spent a lot of time, other than my reviews, but having a long form discussion on how do we feel about Phase 2, what were the impacts, favorite moments, favorite characters, locations, favorite books, favorite piece of published media, all that. We're going to dive into it as concise, but as geeky as we want it to be, because this is what we're here about on Outer Rim Transmission, everybody. So I think the best way to get started is for me to just go ahead and read the opening crawl. And I think that'll give everybody, because I realize there's a lot of people out there that probably have not even opened up a single page of a High Republic anything. So for those of you that are interested, I'm going to read off the good old synopsis. And here it goes. Quest of the Jedi. It is a time of great exploration in an effort to unite the galaxy. The chancellors, keyword chancellors, of the Republic, working alongside the courageous and wise Jedi Knights, have dispatched dozens of Pathfinder teams into the farthest reaches of the Outer Rim. But it is also a time of great uncertainty. Communication is unreliable, and tall tales of mysterious planets and monstrous creatures abound. Prospectors and pirates roam the frontier, and the worlds of Iram and Arona are locked in a forever war. And on the far-off planet of Dalna, a new threat to the galaxy is beginning to emerge. So yes, there's a lot to dive into just that, right? You have like basically 3 different plot lines happening. You have the exploration, which is something I've been looking forward to forever in Star Wars. You have this civil war between these warring people, and then you have this mysterious creatures that we were teased about towards the end of Phase 1. So I think the best way to just open this up is what we usually do, is just like impressions, just a kind of surface level impression, and then I have a whole list we'll go through as much as we can tonight, about just, I know you're a really big fan about this phase, so I'm going to throw it over to you first.
Yeah, the first thought I have is to say, compare contrast to Phase 1. It's just our frame of reference there. Phase 1 went deep into character motivations, into what the Jedi are about. Phase 2 did that for what the Nile would become, and in any other Jedi as a foil to that. But that you always love to see. I mean, I always have a thing about peeling under the surface, peeling back the layers, and seeing how the sausage is made, but also how people tick and what's really driving things, and the way it takes the Nile and says, actually, this is how they start. This is where they come from. This is what they really care about, what they believe. At least Marta, especially, and some of the path of the open hand generally. And so the way it dove into those tunnels, literally and figuratively, of of perspectives on the Force and perspectives on
Yes.
on the Jedi and on being marginalized in the galaxy. I loved it. I ate it up. It was so fascinating, and the way again it does it primarily through this character Marta Rowe, who starts off this incredibly. And I know this is kind of prefacing a question you have coming up, but also that she's just so striking how she starts off this innocent, flower giving, child rearing teenager, babysitter teenager. She's not a babysitter. She's in charge of taking care of the kids for this community, the future of the community. And she goes from that uh, to being betrayed and being, well, first of all, the loss of Kevmo, and then being betrayed by the mother eventually, and that sense of betrayal, and sense of loss by everything the path she thought the path stood for. It really it ties everything together so clearly and so nicely in a what's the word, in a heartbreaking way. You want her to become a hero. She's the villain. She's great grandma. It's not Yana. And so yeah, it just her alone makes this phase fantastic and so gripping. And I think it's shorter, it's tighter than phase one. I like phase one a lot. Phase two, it tells this very gripping, compact story. It does get focused, gets focused a lot on Jeddah, on the Battle of Jeddah. And then a lot later on the Battle of Dalna. But for all that, it means that it's very, again, very focused and very, they did a good job. It's not too sprawling. The one thing I'll say is with the exploration, with the communications breakdown, I think that was teased that it would have more of an impact. It does have a bit, when Chancellor Molo is trying to fix that beacon in Vara Minerno. But the complications of communications breakdown, it was teased as a way of building tension. It may not have as much.
Yeah.
It builds story. It builds, the idea of the Pathfinders is great. And the way, especially in that first young reader novel with the Left Brooks.
Love it.
I appreciated that. But yeah, that was a bit of maybe a red herring too. Yana and communicate and taking the phones away was a red herring. But I mean, on the whole, it had more for me to sink my teeth into intellectually, character wise, than phase one even, and that's saying something because I loved phase one.
Oh yeah. Real quick, I'd be remiss if I didn't actually announce the new writers on board. We have Zoraida Cordova, we had George Mann, we have Lydia Kang, and we have Tessa Gratton, who are all confirmed to be actually a part of Phase 3 for a much larger finish for the entire initiative. And I'll run down a list of all the releases, and you can correct me if I'm missing on anything. I think I got everything. I did this off the top of my head. I didn't have to look at Wikipedia, so I'm proud of that, but hopefully I don't mess up. We have Path of Deceit. We have Quest for the Hidden City. We have Convergence, the Battle of Jeddah audio drama. We have Quest for Planet X, Cataclysm, Path of Vengeance, the High Republic Marvel Comics, the High Republic Blade miniseries. We have the High Republic Adventure comics. We have the Nameless Terror miniseries, and I just threw this in there for extra credit. Tales of Light and Life, which is kind of in between phase 1, 2, and 3, but I'm throwing it in there. I think that's all of them, right? I think I got it.
Did you get a Javellin's Precedent?
That's the one I forgot. Okay.
And then it's not. I guess it's not Quest of the Jedi. The one shot you mentioned that. But
yes, the one shot comic. The one shot comic. Oh, well, I forgot.
And then
That's by Claudia Gray.
What's the one that like the phase 1 framing device? That maybe my brain is mixing things up. Where there's the character that meets up with the Jedi on Valo. She has she's telling a story of something set in phase 2, I think. Unless I'm completely wrong, and that's also a phase 1 story. I could be wrong.
Well, anyway, so that I think
that's my brain is saying that. I'll look that up later. We'll see.
That's mostly everything. But getting back to initial impressions, so I agree with a lot of what you said. So I also feel the sentiments of what you said. I was a bit bummed, man. Or at least with wave 1. Remember, there was only 2 waves. The first phase only had 3. first phase, I was kind of like, okay, where's this going? I was such a fan of how phase one kicked off with this huge, great disaster. It felt like this
Mhm.
epic, like, window into this brand new, shining era of Star Wars. You got all these characters. It really did feel like a movie. And then I was kind of confused. Wait, they're opening with a young adult novel, and there's about five characters in this whole story that are very important. Like, what happened here? And then it's like it's a romance, and I have no problem with romance, but I felt like it started a bit slow, and then you go to Quest for Planet X, or no, Quest for the Hidden City, and I was like, it's a middle grade novel, but this is the kind of stories I was hoping for. Like when we first got the High Republic teased, they're saying this is the exploration of the Outer Rim. Phase one, it's basically most of that's already established. It's mostly already explored. But then they go back another 150 years, and I forgot to mention that as well. Sorry, I'm trying my best to do this, and I forgot to even mention where this falls in the timeline. I believe, Matthew, it's like 380 BBY or something like that. 150 years before Phase 1, which is 200 years before Phantom Menace. Hope you guys got that. But yeah, so we're doing all that. This is the furthest back in canonical timeline of Star Wars we've gone, simply put. And you had mentioned this briefly about, oh, the communications aren't as good. And that's where I think that the middle grade novels, Quest for Planet X, Quest for Hidden City, both written by George Mann, excel in giving you that kind of exploration and the danger of going into the unknown. And that's the thing I was looking most forward to, the High Republic, and I didn't really get that in phase one. I was very, very pleasantly surprised, or not surprised, but very satisfied of what we got from this. Could I have used more of that? Yes, certainly could have. But it was nice getting a piece of, okay, this is Star Wars lore going back. We're discovering new planets. What's that like? You got these Pathfinder crews, they got the medic, they got the communications expert, they usually have a Padawan, they usually have a master. You got like this whole crew with a droid. I love the idea of these teams, and whoever's idea on the Lucasfilm Lumineer group for coming up was great, cool world building and everything else. But yes, so then you get into Convergence by Zrata Cordova, and I was fine with that book. I thought that was pretty cool. I like the idea of like these warring lovers and stuff. That was pretty fun. But then wave two of phase two is what really locked me in. Every one of those books really hit, whether it be Battles with Yaddle, The Night of Sorrow. We'll get into that.
Right.
Everything with Quest for Planet X, where it was like this nice bait and switch where you think the story's going one way and it goes somewhere completely different. I was like, yes, I give props to George Mann for that whole thing he just did there. And the young adult novel, Path of Vengeance, written by Kevin Scott, like, man, that was awesome. That was a great way, a strong finisher. So I think it started off slow, but it won me over with Wave 2. And it's because they did the job of building, like you said, building these characters in that first wave to making them some people that you care about, and you get to see the evolution. They've dived deeper into the characters than they did in phase one. So more on character, this is definitely the phase. Yeah.
The comic in question, you mentioned Planet X. Tears of the Nameless is set on Planet X, or maybe not on Planet X, but the one where they discover the ship full, or is that like, yeah, that's phase two.
That's the Nameless Terror.
Nameless Terror, yeah, that's what I mean. The Nameless Terror, yeah, that's phase two.
I put that in the list.
Yeah, okay, fair, you mentioned that. I don't know, I forget. It's a lot of books. It's a lot of work. But yeah, so it's interesting because like I actually have the opposite impression a little bit. For me, wave one I like better, up to including the brilliant point where one of the times I had to message you after reading a comic book, Marvel issue number 4, with when Worth and Yana go before the convocation, and they're like, "We think you're all nonsense. Please give us a seat." You won't give us a seat? How dare you not give us a seat? That whole dynamic that they build up to with that, and how you're sympathetic to the path, but also where do these guys get off? So yeah, I mean, it's not that I dislike Wave 2. I did. I liked it, but everything I gravitated towards was in wave one. So I
Oh.
mean, it's interesting that we got different. I mean, yeah, slightly different perspectives there.
Yeah, we got some comments coming in. Chris Forsyth, the High Republic, it's just not for me. It said it didn't get me interested at all. I question how far he got into it. Like Timbo Toys is saying, I admit I wasn't into it at first until they introduced Martian Rowe and the nameless creatures. That hooked me. So, yeah, it's great because this is such new Star Wars. It's not gonna work for everybody, and that's what Star Wars in general, right? Like you got the lovers of Andor like myself, and then and then people that just straight up don't like Obi-Wan, right? That's just how things are these days. It's just you got different tastes, but the thing is there's a cornucopia of content and you just can champion your content that you want and shout it from the rooftops like we're doing here tonight for giving a spotlight on the High Republic. So I want to jump into the Jedi. And what were your thoughts on the Jedi this far removed from the Phantom Menace? Were there any Jedi that
Yeah.
stood out to you? What were their ideals like?
Mm.
Did you enjoy Creighton's son as a character? I don't know. He's one of the
Yeah.
guys I just keep remembering his name. He's just like this epic regal Jedi.
So one of the things that's continued from phase one is the characters I gravitate towards are the ones that they spend the most time with. In a lot of ways, in some exceptions with phase one, but in phase two, I mean, thinking about Jedi, I'm thinking specifically, oddly enough, about Kevmo and Gela or Gela, Martian, whatever. Kevmo and Gela. Kevmo again because I mean, Path of Deceit is so great, and being that foil for Marta and that confusing. Oh, he's using the Force, but in a benign way, and ends up saving the Kesserine family, and and also exploring being Padawan, exploring what it's like to fall in love with this weird blue gray girl, whatever. It just different ways in which they express that. I mean, that's another consistent thing with phase one is the younger characters, the young adult characters being the more compelling. Gela, I mean, it's hard. I think, maybe Gela, maybe Creighton and them. I think with Gela especially, it's her ability to have compassion on Axel and take leadership and take charge when she needs to, but also struggle and suffer and be not fully sure. It's interesting, it's not. She's sort of somewhere in between, for example, Avar, Elzar, Stellan, and the Young Knights Padawans. She's in between. She's not a master, but she's very clearly a knight and clearly has some experience under her belt. And and so it's interesting again, and against the backdrop of the path, the Jedi don't stand out as much as they did in phase one. It seems like they weren't the focus as much in phase two, and that's interesting to me. You'd think they would be, but I found that I mean that speaks to the different story arcs and different movement of the different phases and the purpose of the different phases. The purpose of phase one is about what do the Jedi fear? How do they go from being gleaming at their height to that great retreat, the end of Eye of the Storm? Phase two, it's the Jedi are kind of the backdrop. They're kind of there.
Yeah.
They aren't at their height yet.
No.
That's another thing. They aren't as boldly organized. They're there. They're out in the galaxy.
Yeah.
They haven't been pushed back yet, but it's really that phase two is all about how the path become the Nihil.
We got to talk
Nihil
about that.
Yeah.
The
And
path.
so just to say, I don't know if I have a good answer to your original question because they were intentionally meant to be secondary characters.
They're right. I mean, I brought it up because I threw it to you because I'm sitting here thinking like they did not make much of an impression on me either. I'll be honest. It's just they are there in the background. And the coolest thing about the story is it introduces cults to Star Wars. And I've never really, at least I always say I'm not well versed in legends. Maybe that's been a thing. I don't know. But at least in canon, this is the furthest extreme we've gone with having this select group of people that are living on Dauna that have learned to just, that you can't use the Force. It's got to be saved. Save the Force. the force shall be
The force
free,
must be free.
and it must be free, and all this crazy talk, and it's just really cool to have this kind of love. And I love this about the High Republic. It's they make things so much more complex for our benefit, the writers, because it could be so easy to come up with another empire, another kind of Sith or something. But no, they're going outside of the box and they're inventing the Nile, these Viking raider type people that are just going out and stealing stuff. That's pretty neat. Oh, we're going back and they're putting in a cult that is led by somebody with this cult leader, the mother, that is I mean, this is a spoiler cast, so remember, this is all holds no bar on this thing. We're going full in. If you haven't read, it's been over for a couple months now, so hopefully you've read it. I
just finished it like a few weeks
ago.
Yeah, so it's fresh in my mind. Yeah,
but it is so cool, like having this cult led by this enigmatic cult leader that these people are just obeying, and it's like this mind control stuff that is happening where they're getting. They're giving special attention to her and they're doing her bidding. And it's like, what is happening? And I feel like the mystery for this entire series, this entire phase has been so well planned. Like, you're like, okay, what is the mother's deal? And you don't know until like the very end.
Yeah.
What is this the new Nile? Is this the old version of the Nile? What is going on here? So when it comes down to phase 2, it really does come down to, as you said, you're referencing, this is kind of the origins of the Nile, if you will, the origins of the Nameless and why they are so important, right? At the end of phase 1 in Midnight Horizon, Yoda has this mystery figure that we now know who they are, and I'm not going to say because you haven't read the book yet.
As in Tales from Light and Life?
Something else. Just forget I said anything.
Okay. I know what you're talking about. Anyway, I don't know who you're talking about, but anyway,
basically, Yoda said something like, "Oh, we have to go into the past to find out answers for the future," or something to that degree. Yeah. And it lays the seeds of like, yes, they have to. We're getting phase 2. We're getting all this information about the Nameless and the Leveler because they need this information to battle this thing in phase 3. So yeah, very much enjoyed that. But yeah. Talk more if you would like about the path and the path of open hand, the path of a closed fist, whatever you want to call them, because they eventually morph into. And I thought that was a great moment, by the way. But yeah, I'll throw it over to you.
First of all, to say it's a great point that they could have made a very two-dimensional flat villain, group. In phase 1, they somewhat are. Although I will say, Markian. Very well-written character, very well-developed, juicy villain character. He does stand up to Palpatine and Vader and them. Charles Soule especially did succeed with that. But then some, and then they go into Grandma's story here and go into, again, how they come from not this sprawling empire, not so much. The mother, she's kind of mustache twirling a little bit. We can talk about. I know we're going to talk about the big reveal. I'm guessing the big reveal in a bit. Even that, I'll say right now, isn't the most important aspect of that. The most important aspect for her is she wants to be able to use the Force, and she is, and she's using it to control people, and that's probably why the Leveler ends up eating her arm.
Oh my gosh!
All that. But the Jedi envy as this motivation for her, that's not enough, right? There's got to be this deeper motivation of the Force must be free, and things we hear about in The Last Jedi, things we hear about in Clone Wars about the Jedi being arrogant and wanting to control the galaxy. Whether or not that's true overall, writ large, for the Jedi at the late Republic, you can debate that. Palpatine is throwing that line out. But, here's this little farming community outside of this town called Ferden on Dalna, and they're very peaceable and they're very kindly. And again, this model of gifts freely given, and very model of almost not quite Therese of Lisieux, if kind of 19th century Catholic flower history there, or like Just an example of someone who comes to mind. If that reference means anything to you, means something to me. But a very young maternal character, and again, I keep bringing her up because she embodies everything this story is about. Everything that happens. For them to start off on the one hand, start off, it's very layered and complex, and having multiple things happening at once, and that is true, I think, for a lot of these in the real world, for a lot of maybe more fringe religious groups, sometimes not so fringe, especially think of one particular group in that country there that does have a lot of power, a lot of political power now, for the last number of decades.
Mm-hmm.
But having known where, say, evangelicalism comes from, how it is, in a way, I mean, this is me bringing my brain into it. There is. Well, here's where I'm going. Is there the path, and a lot of people are going to read Path of Deceit, especially, and say, "Oh, these guys are right. They have a point. The Jedi can be tempted to use the Force so wantonly." And by the time of phase one and into the late Republic, they very much depended on their institutions and their rules, and and just the way, and using that as a buffer away from community. And that's not really the case. That is a caricature. But if that's if you're told, here's an alternative, here's a way out, here's a way out of the system. Let's go have these peaceable societies. Again, the Kesserine family is a great example of that. To go and raise your family, and Marta and Yana being able to say, "Hey, you're Evereni. You're known as this fearsome species that everyone hates. We don't care. We'll welcome you in," and that can be incredibly appealing. It's incredibly comforting. It can be then incredibly deceptive, especially when it takes on this adversarial, confrontational approach that we see in that great moment. Again, I bring this up, that moment where the shoe really drops on Jeddah. I mean, it's what sparks the battle. Is Worth, the Herald. He goes to, this is in a comic book.
Yeah.
And really well done. I mean, Kevin and George very clearly in cahoots with each other, definitely writing, talking to each other a lot. He goes to the convocation. I'm reiterating, but I'll go in more detail here.
Yeah.
And so the convocation, I mean, the whole idea of the convocation, I love that too. But to say in the convocation, it's this group trying of the different Force beliefs, trying to have some a form for dialogue, which is how you maintain peace and order, and saying we want a seat at the table. And Marta's convinced that the Path is going to get a seat at the table, and the Herald is probably a bit more realistic, but he goes in and says, "Screw you all you guys are wrong. We're the only ones who are right, and we're the ones who are right. Give us a seat at the table anyway, so we can convince you just how right we are." And on the one hand, that's ridiculous, right? On the one hand, if someone barged into our podcast and said, "Our Republic sucks," and you guys are dumb and whatever, that wouldn't be a good content. It wouldn't actually be a productive podcast. On the other hand, again, there's something certainly in the strength of their convictions. That is a key point. In their ability to welcome all sorts of random people, in the possibility of having a very nice, clear, it's not nice, but a very clear, graspable, very simple and simplistic explanation for why bad things happen even to good people. Because some Jedi abuse the Force over here. And so, the balance, the Force levels, and they believe in the Force. They believe the Force exists. They believe they can follow the will of the Force. It's just they can't control the Force. There's a very compelling sense of submission to the will of the Force, come what may. And one thing I will say, and this was the most fascinating thing again for me about this group, is that they aren't so easily the villains. They have a point.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
have
Yeah.
a moral high ground here. I wonder if someone like Qui-Gon, like Ahsoka, like definitely the Cloud Riders in Solo, for example.
We don't hear
I
enough
mean,
about those guys. Yeah.
there's a theory that they're the successors, right? I wonder if
The
they have
successors of the
this.
Nile?
Yeah, there's a theory that they
Oh.
are. Cloud
Oh
Riders,
my
they
gosh.
wear masks. They're standing up against the Coruscant government. Um, there's a theory. I mean, I'll be interested to see it. But to say, okay, if that's what Yoda's, not necessarily Yoda, but others saying, being inspired by what they have to say and what they believe, it's simply that, as we've seen with a lot of real world communities, a very good, I'd say, loving, deeply moral conviction gets taken and gets abused for. I mean, it is financial interest a lot of the ways. I mean, it's not that Alicia really cares about these Force artifacts. She does care about two in particular, but the rest she just wants to fund her war effort. And yeah, it's that's that extra layer underneath it that the Jedi have to and then confront. But then Marta also has to confront herself. So that's the thing for me, is the path of the open hand. One of the great. I'm going to use some superlatives here, in a later question, which we're getting at. The path of the open hand. One of the great factions, one of the great groups, one of the great ideas in Star Wars canon, because they're not like you were saying, they're not this evil empire. They're this peaceful farming
Mm-hmm.
community that
Mm-hmm.
gets corrupted by their own beliefs to some extent, but
Yeah.
by the all or nothing way they go about it.
Yeah, because actually it was established that the path of the open hand ended up being like on their own well before the mother came in. And the
Yeah.
mother came in and just took advantage of them, right? So it was just like, huh, what's going on here? Um, I want to jump in before we get too far ahead of just talking about the leveler and the impact and the horror of this creature and just how it fits in with Star Wars because again, the High Republic has introduced so many awesome ideas into Star Wars. Remember, Michael C. Glane from the onset of this project said, "What do the Jedi fear?" That was the question we all wanted to have answered. It's not something we think about. The Jedi are fearless for the most part. These noble warriors of good and they battle evil and injustice and but what if they are afraid? And this is the manifestation of the Jedi's fear. And it actually plays on them, and we get to see poor Kevmo in the first book. Oh my gosh, like we're seeing this creature, this infantile version of the leveler somehow
Mhm.
manage to still do this much damage. And we get to see just the aftermath and the cover up with Yoda and Creighton's son about what's going on with these things and how it's going to bite them in the butt like 150 years later. What were your thoughts on all of these creatures and how they fitted in with all the stories that we've seen in phase two?
Well, I'll start with how they fit in with what we've seen in phase one, and it was nicely consistent. It wasn't out of left field, right? We've already seen in the Fallen Star, especially, what these creatures can do, and so to see their origins. Here's the thing with phase two. Sorry, with phase one, but phase two, to see their purpose, why it's called the Leveler. In Path of Vengeance, they go to Planet X and they say, okay, there's the Underdweller and these other these different names. The Leveler and the Leveler being connected with the Path's beliefs about balancing the Force by saying that the Jedi have to stop imprisoning the Force, chaining the Force, and this is saying that this is the implications of that. Yeah, I mean, to again, to have that deeper story behind it, um, what it does is it changes the answer to the question a little bit. And the thing is, I don't actually, to the what do the Jedi fear, and I don't actually think there's necessarily one answer. I think each Jedi character has a fear.
Mm-hmm.
In phase one, it was losing. I think it was losing influence in the galaxy, being able to be the ones to save the galaxy. They feared losing that. In phase 2, we do see more about how it's how the Leveler and the Nameless, they feed on the Force, and so it's a sense of the thing. For the Jedi, the Force is the at the core of who they are. Their ability to connect, their sense of the world around them. It's the air they breathe, and for the air they breathe to start choking them, that's terrifying, and that the thing they've come to depend on for their existence. It's to say, what if God is actually evil? or what if there's a way for something that can turn God evil, if you will? And classic Christian theology won't go there,
Okay.
but in the Star Wars mythology it can. And that's, in a way, I mean, to some extent, right? I mean, I don't think it's going to say, just like the Sith trying to actually control the Force, actually bend it to evil, bend it to darkness. The light will always spring back, but not without cost, not without the damage being done in the Night of Darkness, or whatever. I forget what it's called, the Night of Tears.
The Night of Sorrow?
Yeah, that one. Night of Sorrow.
It's hard because they got the Mandalorian, the Trail of Tears, or whatever it was in the
That's
Mandalorian.
what
The
it
Night
is.
of
Trail of
Thousand
Tears,
Tears or
Night
something.
of Sorrow. Yeah. The Night of Sorrow. And so, yeah, so giving it a story, seeing its purpose, and that story being connected to the fears of the Jedi, laying the groundwork then for, I mean, so, at the end of phase 1, they say, okay, Markian has destroyed Starlight, destroyed Valo, has destroyed Starlight.
Yep.
The Nameless are back. This Leveler is back. Why do they all of a sudden say, okay, everyone pull up your tents, let's go hide in the temple?
Yeah.
This makes more sense. It felt, I can see some people feeling that it was abrupt. I didn't necessarily, but this adds so much more, even if they don't know consciously why they immediately make that decision, why that's such the knee jerk. It's ingrained that this is what you do when these things come back, when this threat kind of comes back. Again, even if they don't know it. So, again, with phase 2, giving that deeper layer to what we see in phase 1 and then hopefully phase 3.
Yeah. Speaking of giving deeper layers, it's really cool getting deeper layers to some of the locations, right? We're going to Dalna, and we got to see Dalna in that last book for phase 3, middle grade novel written by Justina Ireland. I always
Wave
forget
3,
the title,
yeah.
Wave 3 of the book,
Yeah.
where they're the destruction. We get to see the destruction of Dalna, and now we're getting to go back in time to seeing what all these references were to, like, Yoda saying, "Oh, I can't talk about," like, no one wants to talk about Dalna. And we're getting that information. We're getting to see it in the beginning when it is that farming community, and the writers do such a great job of showing that slow process of, like, by the end of Path of Vengeance, like, it's just muddy. There's nothing taken care of. It's almost like it reminded me a lot of, like, the Vietnam War, right? Like, these people digging these trenches under the ground. They don't care about the crops anymore. They don't care about nothing. But we've seen what this planet could be and what it did look like before. So I liked the deep calling to the references. The readers like us that are the big heads when it comes to the High Republic, getting through, sticking with it, getting rewarded for just this awesome kind of connectivity between everything. But yeah, the planet Dauna is up there with gonna be some of the planets in Star Wars, right? Like, that we know of, like, could be like the Nar Shaddaa, or could be like the Kef Beers out there, right? Where it's just this not super well known, but they have been really fleshing the heck out of this planet that we've never actually seen on screen before.
Sure. It'll be the Leo point when it comes up next. So just like Arano in Justina Ireland's comic.
Yeah, we got to talk about
Imperial
that.
Arano in in the Sana Star Wars comic. Imperial Arano. Yeah. So yeah, it's
Wait,
there.
that was in there?
And of course,
Wait, really?
yeah, in the Sana Star Wars comic.
I didn't pick
She
up
just
on
goes to
that.
Arano. She just goes to Arano. It looks like any other planet. It just happens to be Arano, and of course, Avon's involved in that. But
Oh.
that's Empire era, so that's a whole other thing. But yeah, it's in there, and one of those, yeah, in phase 1, it's just very this shady thing, this trauma that they don't want to revisit. And yeah, we know why, right? Just imagine again what I was just saying about the Nameless and the Leveler embodying everything the Jedi fear about the Force turning sour.
Mm-hmm.
That memory comes back, even for someone as mentally strong as Yoda. So it fits. It fits well.
Oh yeah, and talking about Iram and Arona, this is a story that we haven't really gotten in Star Wars in a while. At least I don't think. But just the idea about these warring planets, it's like this demilitarized zone in the center of this like space lane. I really like how Zerata Cordova kind of gave us the backdrop, right? The importance of this sector of the galaxy is that again, in the future, we get to see a peace treaty. We get to see these people joining the Republic, but this also dives into the governmental of having two chancellors, having a Quarren chancellor that's dealing with the Outer Rim, having So, who is dealing with the Coruscant Sea. We've never seen a dual chancellorship before in Star Wars. And well, we're also seeing why that doesn't work by the end of Phase 2. So I loved seeing the political aspect of this Star Wars era of timeline, really getting to dive in deep, getting to see this person, how she's dealing in politics with her son as kind of
Keon
like
Greylock, yeah.
Keon, yeah, and all that going on. But yeah, what was your thoughts over the people of Irami who have like the sea, and that's where Starlight Beacon crashes into, and then Irona is just this rocky, hard landscape, and you got these two different peoples that couldn't be further apart from their ideologies. One is more warlike, one is more artistic. It was really neat.
It's very evocative. It's very symbolic. The way the people's mindset matches their terrain. It was a yin yang, and it's sad and frustrating because they should cooperate. They should have a sort of unified governmental, at least government cooperation. We see this a lot in the real world. We see I'm thinking, you talk about Vietnam, North and South Vietnam. In a more peaceable example, you have Belgium, you have Flanders and Walloon. They're able to come together and work it out and figure it out. Different countries have these power sharing agreements. In part, I mean, it has to do with the fact that, well, this is the absence of the Republic in this time period, requiring them to compete with each other for whatever resources come through, and so even the example of the ice trying to get to Arano, and
Yeah.
they're trying to say no, we want that ice for. What do you need ice for? You have lots of water. It's just the hostilities that they forget what they're fighting for, and they forget they're just the ingrained. They're the enemy over there. I mean, that has come up yet again recently last month in the real world, sadly, and I won't get too much into that. But the way that these narratives can get played out, and it was frustrating in a good way, and well written, frustrating. That again, I come back to this moment, this linchpin moment of Worth and Yana in front of the convocation, and then they go out and they start the riot, where the treaty that leads to the treaty just falling apart because people just start blaming the Jedi and people start blaming Iram or Narano. It must be your fault. It must be because people want an excuse to blame the other people, blame the other. The path want an excuse to blame the Jedi. The Jedi probably want an excuse to blame others. I don't know. It was, I will say though, in terms of a duality, the Keong, what's the Molo? I forget his first name. The Greylock Molo, co-chancellor. It was a fascinating idea. I thought it worked well enough. I would say it worked well enough because the two of them, they have this commitment to making it work. There's interesting, again, one of the comments from a convention. Molo is, he's Quarren. He's more focused on the Outer Rim. He wants to be the one who looks good back on Coruscant. Greylark, she's the one on Coruscant. She's already set. She's already good back on Coruscant. She wants to have the outreach to the Outer Rim. And so it's this, I don't know quite how well that got played out. If that's sort of just this subtle implied motivation there. to say, well, maybe to say, I mean, he's, Molo's out there, who wants to be able to come back to Coruscant and say, I made this treaty happen. And of course, when it doesn't work out, he does the best he can. I thought it was a fascinating idea. Again, does it work out or not? The only thing is, I mean, it's that at the end of the day, Keong gets compromised by Axel, and Axel joining the path and being sucked in by the path, and and then I mean, Keong's showing this great heroic moment of resigning her seat, resigning her office,
Yeah.
so she doesn't actually have the bargaining chip for the path, and to bring out that moral core in her was really well written, really well done.
Yeah.
They did a great job not letting us get bogged down in the politics. If they needed the where they did do more, the story needed it to do more, and it did. I'm saying they did a good job was with Iron Arrow, with Zeri and Fantu, specifically with their parents. The domestic situation, in the domestic political situation. So I appreciate that. With the chancellors, it was just a simple. Let's just have them kind of a storytelling.
Yeah.
Make things a little simpler. To have one chancellor out there taking care of business, the other chancellor holding things down at home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, I think it worked well enough, but yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, and as far as the character of Gela, I always like these stories that show us what a Jedi's responsibility is in times where there is no crisis. What does a Jedi do? Okay, she's just overseeing these peace talks, right? Just a simple. The Jedi is there, just to have the Jedi as she's kind of like a representation of the Jedi Order. Okay, we're overseeing this. Oh wow, there's some serious stuff going on. I have to actually defend somebody now because shots are being fired, right? So it's just I like the insertion of a Jedi character into this storyline, but then always, and I love the characters that are non-force sensitive, everyday Joes. Okay, he's a rich boy, so he's not an everyday Joe, but the Axel Greylock storyline is really awesome. Seeing this guy, this party boy from Coruscant, just having a blast, taking advantage of his position of his parents, and then we're seeing him go through the ringer. His character is written so well between Lydia and Zoraida's point of view. Like you kind of, at least I was kind of on the edge of my seat, not knowing exactly where his trust lies. Like where is his allegiance? Yes, exactly. Who's his actual allegiances to? Because it's at the flip of a coin. You don't know what he's gonna do, and then you, like you said, you fight out as part of the path, and it's like, well, is he gonna redeem himself? He's in that facility in Lydia Kang's book, trying to get out of there, pulling a fast one, and still not working on the good guy's side. And then at the end, so there's a lot of great culminations, conclusive moments, like at the end of Convergence, and all these great moments with the flood and the bombs. Like he's one of the best written characters, I feel like, of the High Republic Phase 2, and he doesn't even really have that much of a happy ending, if I'm being honest, at the end there.
He's the chaos, and the thing about chaos is, if you're the villain character, the chaos can turn to the light if that's what he wants to do in the moment. And he just really, again, well written. I loved that's what thing with Gela. I loved the way she has an effect on Axel, and how she provides him this opportunity to overcome this mysterious tragic death of his father, the one he did connect with more, right? The way Keong is able to step into that later at the end, and then for Axel, to have this heroic way to go, and and again, my brain is a little fuzzy because I've read a lot of stories, but I know it doesn't go well, but again, it's because he goes back and forth, and I think his motivations actually do go back and forth. I think he's conflicted because he doesn't want to trust the Jedi, and so it's partly why he's goes into the hands of the mother. He doesn't trust the mother because she's clearly up to no good and got her own interest going on. Does he trust himself? Maybe. Maybe that's part of the thing is him being the chaos. He holds himself lightly at times. His mother surprises him. His birth mother surprises him by showing him that compassion. Gela surprises him by sticking it out, even as he's turned on her and he escapes the prison. Yeah, and also I have read the Tales of Light and Life. He's he's just a kid. He's just
Yep.
irresponsible college frat boy. Trying to party it up.
Yep.
Just, but even then, he has this heart for this girl, and there's the moral core, the core to connect is there with him. It just gets layered and smothered, and then brought out again. And it is in a way a classic Star Wars story, right? Of this young kid who then goes through it. And then his loved ones. It's Anakin clearly, but also I think Afra is one of those characters I keep talking about on Tractor Beam.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few of those. Kind of roguish Han is maybe the clearest example
archetype.
Of a character.
You always have these archetypes in Star Wars, right? The smuggler, the Jedi, the general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Shifting gears into, I do want to spend a little bit of time on George Mann's work with the Quest books, because I really like where he went with those books. He really, again, dived into the exploration, the unknown, the monsters, especially Quest for the Hidden City was fantastic, of just getting into these vampiric type creatures.
Catacomb.
And then what is it, the Catach?
The Catacoot.
Yeah, so cool. And you have this character named Rooper, this badass little girl with these dual lightsabers, fearless, just taking charge and leading this group. And this is the heart of a Jedi, and we get to see another moment of her in Tales of Light and Life. I think you read that story recently, which is a big moment for her. Like I was telling you, Tales of Light and Life has huge moments for the characters, like becoming a Jedi Knight.
Yeah. Rooper just got a great arc, and I will say, it does connect more, like you said, with the exploration, but maybe she is a bit more of a standout Jedi in that, one of the a younger character, and that's the consistent thing with High Republic, always the more interesting characters. She, again, and that moment where she has more to give. She is more together. Similar, I think, maybe to Keeve a little bit, in that Vern, for example. Let's go back to Phase 1. Vern's the prodigy who thinks she has it all together and doesn't, and that Keeve and Rupert, and I think Ram, read his short story yesterday. They're the ones who think they don't and need mentors to come around them. So the Wastelander is able to come around her. We don't see them interact with each other that much, but seeing her come into her own, even in that first story we get of her, her ability to recognize, there's these bat creatures. They're actually here to help. They're not here to harm. It's only the weird black crystal filled zombie ones that are. So she's the one who uncovers it. So, part of the purpose of these stories is also to be inspiring to kids that age, to say, actually, you can go out and take on adventures and offer the world what you already have. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fumble along the way. That's part of life. Greatest teacher failure is you already have so much strength to give as well.
I also forgot another edition. I'm really bad at I just clung. This is just the richness of the High Republic Phase 2, everybody. It's just the fact that I've missed like 3 different things. We got the Tales from Enlightenment, Star Wars Insider short stories, following the patrons of this cool bar on Jeddah City. So there's all that going on, and that's where I'll segue into our Jeddah storyline discussion here. Oh my gosh, I know it's kind of hitting close to home for maybe some people out there, so I don't want to dwell too much on it. but obviously this is modeled after like Jerusalem, multiple faiths coming together, things hitting a boiling point, and bam. But it's just interesting because coming into it now, 350 years, the Jedi are already like on the decline. Obviously, Jeddah City was founded by Jedi. At least I think that's what I read. But they have since not become the predominant force religion on this planet. They are part of a shared convocation, if you will. And I loved seeing that in the very first issue of the High Republic, one by Kevin Scott, is this little backup story of like showcasing like the different force sects of the Star Wars galaxy, at least just a few of them, whether it be like this poison ivy esque sect, and then you have like this the cat looking Zygerian guy with an axe,
Oh yeah.
or yeah, see, I'm already forgetting all the names of these things, obviously, the way I'm
it's still like
stuttering,
that,
but
yeah.
it's just like there's just so many cool, rich characters and religions that you just don't. The people of Teth, no, not Teth. The
Oh yeah.
there's the one guy that Vildar Mac has like
Yeah.
crazy
I know what
triggers
you're talking
with.
about. Yeah.
He's like a red sorcerer guy.
Sorcerer of Tune. Sorcerers
I
of
knew it
Tune.
was something of the T. Yes.
Yeah.
So you got all this cool stuff. Yeah.
Legends, I think, which is another really great deep cut. Sorry.
Oh, Brothers of the Ninth Door, who apparently are going to be showing up in like a contemporary Star Wars story with Qui-Gon, from what I've read in one of the synopsis for his original graphic novel from Dark Horse. So I like how this stuff is bleeding out into the other media and stuff like that. But yeah, what was your? I know you probably have a lot to say when it comes to this
do.
area of because Jeddah is really that flashpoint, and what's great about it is it's halfway through the phase where we get Irem and Rona. They're supposed to have that peace treaty. It goes wrong. Next thing you know, the Path of the Open Hand with the Herald is there. He's butting in, as you said, on this important mission, and then you meeting, and then you have what's going on with the Leveler being unleashed, and it's like, wait, this chaos, what is happening? They're pushing over a Jedi monument and having this battle underneath of it. Like it's just absolute chaos. And then in the meantime, you have the Star Wars Insider story of these poor people in this bar that are just getting busted in, and there's people just rioting inside, and you have Solandra Show, or actually no, it's not Solandra Show, it is Maddie who is defending the temple against all these droids. It's like there's so much stuff happening, like you said. This is like there's like probably 5 or 6 different stories in phase 2 that touch on this, whether it be the Star Wars Adventure by Daniel Holzer, whether it be George Mann's Insider Story, George Mann's audio drama, Kevin Scott's comics. I might be missing something else, but at least 4 different things happening simultaneously, and you get to see the orchestration and the architects working together because we're having all these different characters sharing in other people's books and stories and audio. It was a grand undertaking, to say the least.
They spent a long time with Jeddah. And at one point I was like, okay, are we still on Jeddah? Are we still going? 'Cause it felt so stretched out because it wasn't in real time. It wasn't, usually in these stories you get a sense of that. Like 5-6 months later in our real world, comic book, we're still fighting the Battle of Jeddah. It's still going on. Just to underline how important it is and how pivotal it is. It is the announcement of the path of the open end. It's not the moment they become the Nile. It's not the moment they started. That's a bit later. But it's the Jedi being unable to be the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy. They fail in this mission to broker this peace treaty. We're such a far cry from Rogue One, eh? We just see that the statue down, and yeah, like you said, the city about to blow because the Empire is there and all that. This is 380 years later, earlier before that, where the Jedi it's this whole other world. The Jedi are navigating, being one among many, and Vildar comes in, and Maddie has to tell him, "Look, yeah, I know what you think. From Coruscant." Where the Jedi are it, but I hate to break it to you, but that there are so many other things going on. Now there is the Church of the Force and the Guardians of the Wills. They're very much in with the Jedi and very much supporting of the Jedi. Although the Guardians, they can presage the Jedi predilection to go hide in the temple. They're hiding in their Kyber temple, and I mean, there's a great moment where they get convinced. Okay, the battle's actually out, and in order to protect the Kyber temple, they actually have to go fight.
Yeah.
I mean, so this is one of the things. The earlier iteration of the tractor beam, when all this came up, I did spend a good deal of time reflecting on this. That, yeah, I mean, there's the potential for great cooperation, as I mentioned off the top in this podcast, in this episode, but I mean, the tensions just boil over, and the leveler and the dark side really seeping through everything just boils over. And it's not what you think. I mean, there's the Ninth Door brothers or whatever, that you think they're the dark side. They're not really. They're a lot more benign. But it's the thing is, the convocation, it does represent the opportunity to navigate difference, to dialogue, as I said, to converse and say, okay, this is what we care about. This is what we want. This is what we hope for. And the path representing this destructive element to that. The bombing in the peace treaty negotiation, setting everything off as well. Part of that is the corporate interests with the Grafs and the Santekas, and how the path of the open hand and the mother are able to use those corporate interests to her own advantage as well, into sowing the chaos. I believe it's the mother who does that, sowing the chaos of saying that the Jedi can't be the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy even then. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, that's something I completely forgot about. What?
Yeah.
I feel like I missed something or a story point, but like, how are the Grafs? Wait, the Grafs were involved with the bombs, because I didn't catch that part, because they made references to the Grafs. They made a reference to, like, oh, the Grafs at one of the stories, like, oh yeah, Grafs did something on Jedha, and I was like, what did they do? Like, I feel like that wasn't clear for me enough. I guess I thought it was somebody else that bombed them.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying I thought it was somebody else that bombed them, but I could be wrong. Maybe this is right, and this is where the Grafs are coming in, because I know their ships were there. Because in the Star Wars Adventures comic book, you got not Vernestra, but the alien girl with who's pretending to be a pirate.
Oh, Sav
goes there, and then she's talking to these Graf people. Yeah. And they're like, oh, yeah, something. And they had the Eviscerator fight or whatever it's called. And, oh, okay, so the Grafs bombed
I think city. So I think, what happens is a Senteka mediator.
Oh, yeah.
He gets replaced by a Graf mediator.
Oh, yeah.
The Graf mediator, I think, is in cahoots with the path, with the mother specifically. And that's how all the security defenses get taken down. That I could be wrong about that, but that seems to be.
Oh, okay.
Letting the negotiations. They're supposed to be rubber stamp, right? Armin Arno, the Zirian Fan 2, the Romeo and Juliet couple, happily ever after. Romeo and Juliet. But then no, and then I think that's basically my sense of what happened. So everything, but I mean, there's a reason they take so much time on Jedha to dive into everything that's happened. It felt, oddly enough, more coherent to me than the Battle of Dalna. Not that the Battle of Dalna didn't feel coherent. It did. It's just that maybe everything. I mean, if the Battle of Dalna is all, and I think we'll probably get to that in a bit, but it's all just the same thing happening at different places at different times. With the Battle of Jedha, there's the negotiations fall apart because of the bombing, then the riot, then the different factions.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
It is a little clearer, and I mean, again, the way there's the opportunity for cooperation and dialogue and mutual understanding, the way that falls apart. And do the Jedi blame themselves for that? That'd be an interesting question to see how they reflect on that. Hopefully not. Hopefully, characters like Creighton thinking they did what they could do. But, it was, again, another another really rich, fascinating episode in this whole thing.
Oh yeah, and finishing up as you mentioned with the Night of Sorrow and Dalna. This was one of the darkest moments in Jedi history. I would definitely think
Mhm.
that's the case in this one, because this is kind of like the battle where the Jedi, yeah, they vanquish the Mother and all this, but at an incredible loss. Like it
Yeah.
is disheartening to say the least what happens to their kind. Just
Mhm.
countless dozens of Jedi I think fall in this battle, and it's just raining, dark. You think of like the most evil kind of things happening here with these levelers just petrifying Jedi all over the place. And they're using like traps on the Jedi. It really felt like it was something like Vietnam War for the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah, it's a great parallel. Just getting them trapped on foreign soil, on an unfamiliar territory. Them using, I mean, the path they use their home turf really well. And as I was saying before, it isn't so much the numbers aren't as important. Just like with the fall of Starlight Beacon, people sometimes wonder how significant that was. It's it's just one station that comes crashing down, but symbolically, what the fall of Starlight represents, and then the fall of all these Jedi in Dalna represents. It is like I was saying before. It is the thing the thing that the Jedi come to know as their comfort and their source of meaning and purpose twisted against them so easily, so simply. That once a nameless comes at you, you're
Mm,
done.
mm-hmm.
Some of them can get dragged out, but nobody's safe. Creighton isn't safe. yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, that is similar to in Phase One,
You
with
also
some of
have
the
the Nikto Jedi. What was her name? His
it's
partner.
Creighton's kind of colleague, former
Yeah.
Padawan, I think. Yeah, the one also on the cover of the Battle of Jeddah. I forget her name,
Yeah, I believe
but
she
yeah,
was a knight, but
yeah, but like I think former
Ada,
Padawan.
is it her
I
name?
think
Ada Fortune or something like that?
it is
Ada.
Forte. Yeah,
There we
yeah,
go.
definitely with Creighton in cahoots with her, saying in cahoots a lot. Yeah, and again, it hard to. I admit it was a little hard to feel just how perilous it was because so much has
Okay.
happened. So much has happened in Phase One, but yeah, the Night of Sorrow. I wonder, as in Phase Three. Here's what I wonder for my own perception of it in Phase Three, where they do have to actually start revisiting what happened, and if that is going to have more emotional impact for me. Um, Maybe because it is just so the ability of the Nameless to take the Jedi out is so decisive
Yeah.
that I found it. I don't know. It's hard to describe.
I think it was just the
Yeah,
carnage. Yeah, I agree. Like it
yeah,
wasn't I wasn't as emotionally attached to, let's say, like the Rising Storm, like people falling in
yeah.
that. But with this
Maybe
it
it's
was
overwhelming.
also,
I'll say this. Maybe
yeah,
it was overwhelming.
it was overwhelming, especially
And
when the
yeah,
path of the open hand people become so militarized and they just start charging and just going to arms. It's like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, how did we get here? Like these people are so brainwashed. It's
mhm,
unbelievable how brainwashed they got. They think the Jedi are going after them. They're like, oh, the Jedi are here to get us. And it's like, what? We're here to just try to save our friends.
yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Again, I don't think that's brainwashed. Well, it is brainwashed, but I don't think it's unbelievable. Is what I mean, right? It fits with the way these communities end up getting out radicalized and militarized. And if you're told, this is your safe space, so I mean, kind of similar to what the effect of the leveler and the nameless, right? If this is your safe space, uh, it goes in a different direction. But then here's this group. Oh, there's other people come to threaten you. You're gonna feel victimized that way. The
Yeah,
difference, of
sure.
course, with the leveler and the nameless is that that's the point. But yeah, it's striking, it's realistic. I followed it. It is striking how just in a moment they switch from the path of the open hand to the path of the closed fist. You know, the large scale symbolic transition from the path to the Nile. It's not the full transition, but it was really, it was really evocative, and that it happens in Path of Vengeance, not so much in Cataclysm, right?
Yeah.
But it happens, and so
Yeah, so you have that, and I thought that was just one of the crowning moments of this entire phase. It's just like this thing we've been getting hinted for the longest time, and to see it come through fruition. Seeing Yaddle, that was one of the coolest things, seeing Yaddle fighting like this little blur across the battlefield, just slashing up people, and just, it was great. More Yaddle content. I mean,
yeah, we got to get more. I mean, after and I'm hearing Bryce Dallas Howard's voice in my head. Yeah, it's great.
Oh man, and going into the legendary Jedi himself, Porter Engel, the Blade of Bordota.
Mm-hmm.
That was neat. I like when Charles Soule does these deep dive miniseries, this 4-issue series of just getting into the weeds with it, and getting the origin story of the Barash Vow, understanding his sister and their connection. And I like how we explain that. Like, again, you don't have to be blood to be family. And having that whole idea, having the idea of the office of whatever it's called, where like it's like the frontier, it's literally the frontier, so anybody can show up. Oh, I'll take a mission. Next thing you know, they end up in this like war, and we even have a mercenary that is going to appear in Phase 3 as one of the major villains. And even somebody on the panel at New York Comic Con said something about like, oh yeah, the Nile aren't the only threats out there. And I'm like, oh yeah, this person's gonna be out there for somebody. A rematch of the century, literally in this case, with Porter Engel fighting against the general. Forget the name of the general. There's so many characters. There's an encyclopedia coming out with over 250 characters. So give me a break, everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think of this one?
So the Blade, it's a fantastic standalone story. The way it explores. I mean, we got a ground siege in Star Wars. Who knew? The way, the origins of the Barash Vow, and the way it this thing could have been almost set whenever in a bit, in that it explores that question of Jedi interference and presuming to know, what the right side is or not, and how Barash, she's so certain, and the first time I read that, it's like, yeah, I thought, oh yeah, she's gonna experience something. This isn't gonna end well for her, because, I mean, that's the thing with the path. That's the thing with, the accusation, at least, of late Republic Jedi joining the Clone Wars. Luke Skywalker looking back in The Last Jedi. Certainty. We aren't given certainty, and if you try and depend on certainty as this very stiff rod, when it faces adversity, it's going to break. It's going to crack. The blade is going to shatter. And for Porter, the blade shatters. His beloved sister. I believe she, or I forget entirely what happens with her, but
Me too.
yeah,
It's been a while.
It doesn't end well. But it's been a while. But the origins of this vow. So first of all, bringing in this thing from 2017 comic. So yeah, Barash Vow, what Anakin knows. Kirik Infala is actually coming back into Phase 3, which is exciting. This one feels almost.
Wait, how'd you know that? Real quick. Sorry to interrupt. How do you know he's going to be in it?
Charles posted on Instagram.
All right.
Or something. Yeah.
Just read one of the things you have to catch up on.
Yeah, I know. It's coming. But
I was shocked when I seen it. I was like, what?
You didn't? Okay. You didn't, I knew it was coming. Okay. Because Phase 1 and Phase 3 especially are going to reflect on what does it mean are the Jedi going to cower in fear and absent themselves from the galaxy because they can't be trusted to choose between light and dark. They don't trust themselves to at least confront the Nile and to confront their own fears. And we know ultimately they do. But what's fascinating always for me is what the Barash Vow says about the wider galaxy, about the Jedi overall. And so that's the thing. I mean, we know that the sequel to The Blade is actually going to come in Phase 3. It's not.
Oh,
I thought it was going to be a Phase 2 book.
yeah,
At the end of The Blade, we have this announcement,
yeah,
and I think that's a Phase 3 book that hasn't really been talked much about.
huh, yeah.
But unless that got dropped and plans got changed. But yeah, because it feels like this smaller story of the Blade. It's a smaller story. We know Porter's in Phase 1. He's just, and it's one of those elderly crossovers where he's making soup, and he's really good at making soup now. But
Yeah, and I
was this
think,
legendary swordsman who now, the Blade of Bardota, who now doesn't seem to want to fight at all. And of course, the origins of the brush out there. So yeah.
I think he's actually going to be behind the storm wall in Phase 3
Oh,
with
interesting.
Avar
Okay.
Chris. I think I heard
Yeah.
that mentioned somewhere, maybe. So that's
Mhm.
cool.
Okay. Yeah.
But no, I mean, just looking at this book as a surface level, what it was promoted as was this is the one of the most badass Jedi you'll ever
Yeah.
see. And I think Charles really nailed it because I like the idea, again, kind of like the dual chancellorship. We have like a
Mhm.
dual Jedi companionship. You
Yeah.
got Barash, who is all with the Force itself as almost like a mage, right? She just
Mhm.
doesn't use blades, doesn't use a saber really, just channels with the Force. She's used there. They basically are using each other's strengths and balancing their weaknesses. So you got
Yeah.
you got him with the lightsaber. He can fully focus on the saber as his primary weapon and defense, more so than the average Jedi who has to focus on a balance of everything because he knows she's always got his back. So just see him excel with like using the force to hover the saber and fight without the use of holding the saber. Like just really cool stuff you would see in like a video game or probably in one of the Star Wars Legends stories. Like we do get to see him excel. We get to see where he gets this awesome fame as being a skilled Jedi, kind of just roaming the galaxy. And it was a really nice story of like, yeah, the Jedi out on the fringes of the galaxy getting involved with this plan and getting that reputation and defending that reputation.
Yeah, it was really cool to see. Definitely would love to see that in Jedi Survivor Fallen Order #3, whatever it's called. That'll be fun. That'll be cool. Porter's story though is, I think the point is actually to say, yeah, he has his sister's certainty to guide him to figure things out. That ends up not going well, not going right, and because the stiff rod breaks, the blade breaks, and Barash's certainty breaks. I wonder if for Porter rather, the point is, yeah, I can do all these things with a lightsaber, but so what? What's the point? Because if we can't be certain, we actually have to be attuned to the will of the Force, and you can't be certain about the will of the Force. You have to be aware of it. I mean, the reason why the path are kind of right to some extent is that humility to say we don't know what the will of the Force is, uh, except that we can humbly listen and sit and the traditional word I use is discern, as in take our life experiences and take our things we know could go well and go not, but also what do we care about in the galaxy? What do we hope for? And for Porter to see, oh, what matters? What really matters? And it goes back to Yoda. Wars not make one great. And so, again, the ability to swing three lightsabers at a time with your mind, it's cool. It's great. What are you doing that for? What is it? What are you using that for? And is there a more peaceable way to go forward? And I think, I mean, I think that's a bit of what the Barash vow is supposed to try and say is to let go of the lightsaber entirely, let go
Hmm.
of interference entirely. Not in the same way that Luke does, where the time for the Jedi to end, but to say, I'm going to go off and meditate as a hermit. And I don't think this reporter takes the Barash vow himself, but clearly he's on that other
Frona.
in baking. Yeah, he's making soup making
egg
soup for
soup.
Belle, and all that. And so he's there, but he's not fighting. He's supporting. And yeah, I'm really curious again to see where that goes, because it's a half story. The Blade. It's an awesome story, and it ends up with the actual siege and those star-crossed lovers
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah, that's
It
cool with
ends
the
up well.
pregnant girl and like the
Yeah.
mother's getting pissed because they think it's something. They call in these mercenaries, and the mercenaries want blood, and it's like, oh my gosh, this whole drama. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah. So that was cool. That was great. Well written story, an interesting story. Yeah. What does it mean for Porter? What does it mean for Kirik? What does it mean for the Jedi as a whole? And then stretching all that out, what will it mean for Vader and Anakin? I almost wonder. This is my dark horse pick. Here's my dark horse theory. Mr. Souls writing the story leading up to the end of Return of the Jedi. Is
mm.
there a final chapter for Porter with Anakin? I don't know.
Oh wow, that's
Just
a
his influence, his legacy, and
yeah.
Barash's legacy
Hmm.
through Kirik, through someone else. I mean,
Interesting.
with Luke takes the Barash vow in a way at the very end there.
Hmm.
And maybe that's Anakin seeing that, Vader seeing that. Oh, this is it. This is the point. This is what I care about.
Oh.
Just like Kirik cared about, just like Porter cared about. Luke is doing this too. There it is. I brought it
There
all
it is.
together.
There it is. We got it
Return
all
of the
together.
Jedi at 40.
There it is. It's all connecting as one galaxy. Kind
Yeah.
of starting to end things, wrap things up here. Any other characters or moments or specific books that you really want to talk about or you enjoyed with the High
Yeah.
Republic Phase 2 Quest of the Jedi?
Yeah, my favorite book is Path of Deceit. I really love Path of Vengeance. We can
Yeah.
talk about Yana a little bit.
Okay.
Well, maybe. We still want to talk more about Marta, actually. Uh, just because, yeah, the way. This is to me actually the climax moment in Path of Vengeance, and I think I messaged you this. I'll ask you this: where, at what point are the Nile born? Would you say?
Oh, at what point are they born?
Yeah,
I,
spiritually, narratively.
well, I feel like the Battle of, or the Night of Sorrow is their initiation, really, because that's when they just go head to head with the Jedi. Their
Yeah.
animosity becomes materialized, and they get the actual physical markings of something on them. It's the vertical instead of the horizontal, right?
Yeah, that's a good one. I put it, and when I read this line, I was like, this is it. This is the moment when, so in Path of Vengeance, the mother is taking Marta to task for bringing this journalist in, and
Oh yeah.
you're the guide, but you're not the guide. Come on, you don't know what you're doing. You just stay put. You're on the sidelines here. Marta says, "Screw you. I'm taking matters into my own hands. I am going on that ship. I don't care." That's the moment. That's the moment where she steps into her power, steps into her authority, into her thing as the mother, really, of the Nile, and decides, that these older voices, these other voices, be it the mother, be it the Jedi, be it even this other guy who she's kind of into, but not, or kind of into, but not an ever any. So we know he's not great great grandpa. um, I have read that story in Tales of Light and Light too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it to me, that's when her story is complete in a way. Of course, she then, has a more benevolent approach to Yana, even after she hacks off her hand. That was it's a very fast turn back, but again, it's the core of what Marta cares about, what she wants. She wants to be the mother in every way, right? She wants to be just like she was the mother to these littles in a way, not the birth mother, but the one in charge of taking care of them. She wants to be the guide. She wants to lead this group out into this new future. And it's the moment she pushes past all these messages that have been pouring on her that you're too small, you're too soft, you're too weak. No, Marta says, no, I'm kind to some extent, but I have these convictions and I'm going to go. And again, the way Phase 2 gives the Nile this heart, this core that we do see at the sort of the Tales of Light and Life, the heart of Marta, in this stormy, cloudy exterior. It gives the Nile this deeper, richer sense of maybe they're there, or at least originally there and residually there, to carve out a place of, just like they were on Dalna, they carve out a place of family and community that accepts people. And, is that the key to bringing them back? Because that's not what the Nile are. They are the villains. They are there to take what they want. They are there out of a deep distrust of the Jedi. I think how they are a precursor to the Separatists to some extent, to a large extent. And the way, one of the things about the Separatists is, the corporate interests and trying to just, the Trade Federation and the Techno Union want to do what they want, make all the money they want. But then you have Mina Bonteri, who wants just freedom to form her own community without having to be beholden to Republic trade and Republic taxation, and the kind of the communitarian libertarian perspective. What if there's a core there? The Knight Riders might be in on a little bit. This Phase 2, especially with Marta, really dives into that and shows that that's a possibility.
Yeah, I love the idea that you go back to Light of the Jedi, I believe, and it's Athgar Row, talk about Markion Row, and they're sitting there having a discussion. It's like, oh yeah, we've hated the Jedi going back to your grandmother or my grandmother or something like that. And he's literally referencing Marta Row, and we're getting that entire backstory of her with the mother of this crazy want for power, but she is one of the best characters because you look at her as this meek little girl that's taking care of these youngsters. And she becomes and transforms into this monster that's just vehemently going against the Jedi and forming these patterns and taking the nameless, the leveler for themselves. And it's like, wow, talk about a 180. Talk about really good character development over a matter of a couple of books. Really getting to see her character go from point A to point B and really evolve, and having that emotional weight of Yana, who Yana is actually, it's like a swap because Yana is there, her cousin is the warrior. She's going out on the missions and doing all this stuff, and Marta's like, yeah, I'm gonna just stay here with the kids. And then by the end, it's like they reverse, and Yana wants to bring her back from the dark side, essentially, in a way. And it's like she gets her arm cut off. It's like, what the heck?
By Marta with a lightsaber.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. In a fit of rage and fear, but yeah. So, yeah. Again, it's all of this is making me curious to know what happens in the intervening period.
Yeah.
What with Yana, at least with some of the other characters, but also then what. This is my big question, actually, is, it's a 180 to some extent. How much of the gift freely given flower girl is still there in the Nile? Is it still there somewhere? And if that's this consistent through line, to say there's an appeal to say we actually want to, we want to build a freer society and build freer communities. And because here's where I'm going with this ultimately is, I've connected Luke with the Brush vow. I mean, you can say there's the Separatists and there's the Rebel Alliance, and there's different ways that go on. But the Rebel Alliance, they're taking on the galactic government for in the name of good. Again, that's the Night Riders, the Cloud Riders are part of that. The Separatists, we want to tell stories of how they are the villains of the prequel trilogy, sure, and the Clone Wars, sure. There are more complex stories to tell. Yeah, the Nihil are the villains of Phase 1 and 3. This is a more complex story to tell, and people, like with Barash, you can't be certain you're always fighting the right side, Padme even asks that, right? Are we even on the right side here? What about my friend Mina? What's she up to? I don't know. I actually do. I mean, I do trust them to go. Phase 2 especially has given me the sense that they can actually go to that depth now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, so to wrap things up, I think you and I are kind of a little bit on the opposite ends of this, which is funny, and that's why it's great to have you on the balance idea. I feel like I still enjoy Phase 1 more, and it looks like you enjoy Phase 2 more. So we're gonna see how Phase 3 goes for the both of us. Right now, I'm saying it's very good so far. What I've read, but yeah.
I mean, I love Phase 1. So Phase 1 is part of my favorite. So it's not like we're not that opposite. I think I get where you're coming from for sure. I mean, the question of Phase 1 is more interesting to me. And the question of Phase 3 especially is, what do the Jedi do?
Yeah.
How do they respond when they're weakened? And how do they respond to their greatest fear of not being able to be the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy? If that is the real answer to the question, I think it is.
And I think why.
So yeah, I mean, I like Phase 2 more, but I still love Phase 1.
I think it goes to show what the characters we really drive toward. Like, I'm really big with the Jedi, and seeing Avar Kriss, seeing Bell Zettifar, seeing Loden Greatstorm, seeing all these names I could just rant off from the top of my head. These are Jedi that have made an impact, whereas Jedi, like we said, they take more of a back seat in Phase 2. It's more of, okay, let's talk about Marta Rowe and the Mother and the Herald and what is going on with them. So I still love the idea of the cults, but seeing the Jedi at the height of their power in Phase 1, using these amazing Force abilities that I never even could have dreamed of for a Jedi to use, seeing how powerful they are and how sure in their abilities they are, I gotta still stick with that. But Phase 2, I will say, matters, right? There are people, I have a coworker, which is funny because this coworker literally got hired about less than a month ago, and within a month he's already found out that I'm a YouTuber that he has watched for his High Republic recaps. I'm like, what? So he has not started Phase 2. I've given him kind of like a breakdown of Phase 2. He might just end up jumping into Phase 3 instead of doing Phase 2. So what would you say to him for somebody that liked Phase 1? What would you get them to do to get to Phase 2 instead of just skipping to Phase 3? What is good enough to read about Phase 2 that's going to really stand the test of time and really make it something that's worth reading?
I mean, what we've been saying, if you thought the Nihil were cool, you have no idea how great they are.
Fair enough.
And if you thought Markian's heritage was cool, you have no idea how great his heritage is. So, that's what I think. I mean, that's an interesting point you make, right? I mean, the Jedi, the Space Wizards, they are the thing I gravitate towards too, for sure. My favorite Disney Plus streaming thing is the most recent Space Wizard show because it delves into all that. My favorite question is what does it mean to be the Jedi in the galaxy? I think it's just in terms of character development, like separating that out, which I rarely do, right? I always go through the big ideas, as you can tell right now, all viewers can tell right now. Separating that, I think, just in terms of storytelling and characters, this one just has the edge. That's all it is. But,
yeah. And here's for even more broader question. This is coming from Chris in the chat. He says, what would you say to a hardcore fan to get them into the High Republic?
Like, as in someone who, like a
Somebody who's
fan
on the
of.
fence that doesn't really know if it's going to be for them. What would you say to sell them on the High Republic? Why should they read the High Republic? Why is it going to matter to them in their overall Star Wars lexicon
Yeah.
of lore? What is the big idea here for the High Republic?
I mean, it depends on how prequels they are, and that's the only part of it too. I would, I would say, for me at least, it's you saw the Jedi at their height of their powers. Well, this is the sequel trilogy line. At the height of their powers, the Jedi let Darth Sidious rise from the Empire and wipe them out. How did they get from there to there? How did that happen? How did they end up being so unable to see what's in front of them? And where did they come from before? And so, yeah, again, it's a Jedi story, is to underline that point. Um, Also, if you want something so unique and different that's still so authentically Star Wars, that's so deeply interconnected with each other, right? If you're kind of one of those folks who's like, I want screen to match up with paper more. I want paper stories to be conversation more. If you're a canon junkie like us, I mean, this gives you everything there. It's everything so wonderfully interconnected. If you want to be rewarded for that, and then the last thing I'll say is, if you like YA, if you love YA and younger characters, at the core of what Star Wars is, right?
Hmm.
1977, we see an 18-year-old kid who doesn't know what he has to give, and he's thrust into these adventures. And if that's what you love about Star Wars, well, here's a whole initiative where these characters of this age take center stage.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think people need to understand about High Republic is the main characters are all under the age of 25. If you're over 25, you're no longer, except for maybe Gela and Zurian
Wait,
Factory.
Elzar Man, I don't think he's 25, right? I think he's like in his
I
30s.
don't think he's the
Avar
main character,
Chris.
but I don't think he's a main character. I think,
Oh.
yeah, he's a lot to do in Fallen Star. Yeah, they have a lot to do in those books. It's tricky because there are a lot of. Sorry, I'll backtrack. I won't say he's not a main character. He's amidst the whole cast of main characters. The older characters are still a little more supportive
I see.
because they're already their development is already there to
Hmm.
a large extent. I wonder if that might be not the same case for Avar. I think Avar has more to do in Phase 3. She might become more interesting,
Oh yeah.
but we're given so much
Yeah.
time and development and the storytellers have put so much effort in taking these younger characters from where they are to where they need to be. And
Yeah.
I mean, my guy Wreath Silas, for example, is a great example. Character I
Hmm.
gravitate toward the most in all of
Yeah.
High Republic.
Oh, I can see that.
Uh, wanting to hole up in a library just with his head in the clouds in the past, going from that to being thrust into these adventures and saying,
Oh yeah, on Corellia
okay,
fighting against Legion of Nihil to almost his deathbed.
but using what he's learned in the textbooks, in the history books, to say this is how this is relevant for today, and getting knighted for it at the end.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. So
Yeah.
yeah, that all those things, it's new and it's different, but it's so authentically Star Wars at the same time.
Yeah, what I'll say is like if you're a fan of Jedi and you want to see Jedi do incredible things like battle meditation essentially with Avar Chris,
Mhm.
using incredible stuff with moving waves with Elzar Man, just a
Yep.
different perspective on the Force as a whole, getting just new places to go, new factions. I said you're not dealing with, the Empire 3.0 here. You're dealing with a completely new faction. You're dealing with characters that have so much development and above all things, you're dealing with stakes. These are characters that, 99% of them we don't know the fates of. So if you want your Star Wars to have high stakes, to have you on the edge of your seat all the time, none of these characters are safe, and a lot of them are dead, actually. Some of the characters we talk about today are actually dead and at the end of this thing in the story, like shocking moments like that, right? Like, so, Game of Thrones, Star Wars level of, oh my gosh, like I can't believe they just did that to one of my favorite characters. So if you're really in for that kind of entertainment, but like really diving into the lore and the past. This is a story, and again, this is carving out a new era. I fully expect in 2026, when this is behind us, it's going to end in 2025. 2026, I would imagine they're going to be doing another initiative like this because it's already successful. It's already got New York Times bestsellers on several of the books. I can't imagine that Lucasfilm won't start to maybe go, that'd be cool if they went into the future or even more into the past at this point. So there you go.
I think one last thing I'll say to answer that, if for those who have read Star Wars novels, this is the recent canon novels and are into diving in, Claudia Gray, Charles Soule, Kevin Scott, those three
Yep.
names specifically. Do I need to say anymore?
Yeah.
If you loved Last Shot with Daniel Jose Older, the Santa comic with Justina Ireland, but Claudia Gray, Charles Soule, and Kevin Scott. Just read what they write.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And Chris is chiming in and saying, oh, yeah, I guess I'll do the audiobooks. Like, audiobooks are great because I was listening, my girlfriend and I, this is like years ago when I had first met her. One of the first things I did was tell her about the High Republic. And then she ended up downloading Light of the Jedi on audiobook. And we were out on the deck, grilling, listening to Markion Rowe's little narration with Mark Thompson. So that was great. But yes, so the audiobooks are great quality. And then, like we said, they have the audio dramas, they have one per phase, which are really neat because it's like a whole full cast. And each audiobook has sound effects. And if you're familiar with the Star Wars audiobooks, they're as of the same quality. Sound effects, music, the whole 9 yards, amazing audio, amazing character voices and sound effects. Definitely give it a shot. Audible, right? I'm not sponsored by them or get paid by them, but I think you can get like a free audiobook to just try it out or something. You can get Light of the Jedi, start there, phase 1, first book, and see where that takes you. But yeah, so that is gonna do it. I think we could have gone on for another 2 hours, but I had to pull the plug at some point because I still have to go to work tomorrow. But this was a pleasure having you on, man. I feel like we got some good discussion. That hopefully it's a pleasant listening experience for some of those that are familiar, or some hopefully that were able to follow us along on these tangents as we talked about. Getting, as I said, Spoilercast. We got deep in the weeds here. This is something I've wanted to do for a while, and it was great having somebody as knowledgeable as yourself on here to actually break into the reality of our world and kind of equate it to the High Republic, this is always something I would love to do, but I feel like I don't have the education you have to go on those lengths of just knowledge. It's fantastic, man. Thanks for being on.
I mean, I'll say credit to the writers for putting for taking those stories in those directions. They didn't have to do that. They do, and it gives me things to think about. I mean, I know Claudia Gray at least has a similar educational background as I do. I know Kevin Scott does too. So, yeah, I'm glad to bring that out and bring out these connections. I mean, wearing the Mortis T-shirt, just to give that extra little, whatever. But yeah, it's maybe, and it's part of why the path is so fascinating because of those real world connections. So yeah, as always, a pleasure to come on and chat High Republic, chat Paper Canon with you. We definitely, the Tractor Beam is something I look forward to every week, and so glad to extend it into Outer Rim here.
Yeah, we're crossing over. Go ahead and share to everybody that's listening now and after the fact. Where can I find you? Where your content? Talk about Eye On Canon. I don't know if we really mentioned the Monday stream as well. You do?
Yeah, I did briefly. Yeah. I mean, I did briefly at the top. It's good to plug it again. Yeah, the main thing I do, the Eye On Canon podcast. If you know the Star Wars Underworld, it's the Star Wars Underworld Network, Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, all those socials, carrying the banner. So the Eye On Canon podcast is, we call it your home for in-depth discussion on lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon, focusing on Paper Canon, shining a spotlight, especially as the strike continues, as the main flagship continues to say, okay, we want to make sure the actors have their leverage in their negotiations with the production companies. So Joel and I decided, say, well, let's shine the spotlight on these paper stories, and in diving in deep with these kinds of conversations that we do that aren't really as affected by the strike so much. And so carrying on, so you can catch that on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific every Monday night. It's also on, I believe, trying to make sure it's on the Underworld YouTube or Underworld Facebook, Underworld Twitter, Eye On Canon Twitter, at Eye On Canon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD, Eye On Canon Twitch. I believe something to do Underworld Twitch as well. Just anywhere, just make sure you can get it. Those I am able to upload to Spotify and Apple Podcasts right afterwards. So I'm not behind on those ones. So yeah, this coming week, actually interesting, talking about building off. Joel and I were talking about what may the next initiative be. Just as a theory, just as a hunch, we're talking about whatever little morsels of the old Republic exist in current canon. Whatever there's been mentions, including some mentions in Tales of Light and Life. That I'm reading this and I'm taking screenshots. Really? I'm sending photos. Yeah, there's a few just little mentions in reference to things that are happening in the current story at hand. Like for example, there's just the Stormwall and the introduction of the Stormwall, and someone compares that to the Ancient Jedi Sith War. For example. Just that little bit of a tidbit there, and so we're just going into and just looking at what is that, what do we have, kind of a survey of what do we have and what kind of story avenues that might lead to. For Phase 1 breakdown, High Republic Phase 1 with Chris, with our buddy Dominic.
Yep.
Head over to, I believe that is on the Underworld YouTube channel. Might be on the Eye On Canon YouTube channel. Can't remember, but it's there. That was what, one year ago, year and a half ago, whenever that was. So yeah, it's been fun. And then as mentioned, still also on the Underworld YouTube channel, this guy right here, Tractor Beam Comics Reviews. Comics come out Wednesdays. We read them on Wednesday night. Read them Wednesday night whenever. Then Chris does his recap in the morning on this channel, and then over on the Underworld channel, 12:15 Eastern time. Bring your lunch, bring your comics, and we chat about them. We go in, take some time to go in depth. Not as long as this, obviously, because I have to then get back to work in the middle of the day. It's on my lunch break, but just to review these comics, and it's good to have this set time and actually be with someone on YouTube. Otherwise it wouldn't happen. That's what happened to the old Tractor Beam. I just couldn't do it by myself. So having this comrade in arms, and as mentioned, also plug our adventures in New York City, also on the Underworld YouTube channel. You and I made 4 videos. I made another one with Anna, also from the Underworld Network. And yeah, just chatting about what we saw in New York City. All my photos from New York. Last plug I'll make for my personal socials. Photos from New York on Instagram at MNEUG1138. I am on Threads. I don't really use it there, but same thing. On Twitter at NEUG485. Fair warning, I will mostly be tweeting about Taylor Swift for the next few days, but and focusing on that and posting about all that. But it's been great, been a lot of fun. Keeping the torch alive. I mean, again, as the Underworld, understandably, Dom, Chris, and Ben, they want to, and Hannah, they want to make sure that the actors again have their leverage. It's just keeping this going and keeping content going, keeping it flowing, and getting myself out there has been really great to share what I can share and offer what I can offer, and I hope people find it meaningful.
Oh yeah. We certainly do. Yeah, we appreciate everything you guys do over there. Comics. Again, guys, join us every Thursday at 12:15 p.m. Eastern. We want everybody available to watch us and to talk with us about the comics, because it's a little nuanced, little niche of a community, and we're trying to raise it up, right? We want more people to talk with us about the comics. So come on over and do that over there. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for everybody in the chat. Again, you can download this episode on any podcast app. I did not mention that off the top of the show. We're available on Spotify here, Outer Rim Transmission. We're available on Apple Music, on Amazon Music, on any of the other streaming platforms. And if you're listening after the fact, we go live okay, this was an exception. Usually we don't go live Fridays anymore, but I had to make an exception. We usually are going live on Sunday. Programming note, we will be back next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So don't show up on Friday because there won't be anything here. So next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to see what happens. There's talk that this could be over by next week. There's some serious talk that this could be over by November 1st. So we're going to see what happens. And we're going to have something to talk about regardless, but maybe we'll have some joyous thing to talk about if that news gets announced. But yes, so for Matthew, for Chris, for Ben, for Milton, who couldn't be here this week, this was episode 126 of Outer Rim Transmission. Go ahead, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed our talk about the High Republic, and subscribe to the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network. That's going to do it for us here. Thanks for watching. May the Force be with you, and transmission.